Eccles Business Buzz podcast. I'm your host, Frances Johnson, and I'm so glad to have you back. Every year, the Kem C Gardner Policy Institute at the David Eccles School of Business actively acknowledges individuals and entities that contribute to the prosperity of our community here in Utah. Recognized as informed decision makers, these people and groups often perform important work behind the scenes without much fanfare. Over the next few episodes, we're going to be turning up the fanfare a little bit and chatting with this year's informed decision makers. And today, I'm so pleased to be joined by Theresa Foxley. Theresa is Chief of Staff to rPlus Energies, a national leader in utility-scale renewable energy and energy storage development. Theresa is passionate about developing diversified, dispatchable, affordable, renewable energy. A Utah native, she has spent her career championing economic growth in Utah and serves her community through numerous boards and initiatives. For example, Theresa's commitment to business recruitment as the president and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Utah brought numerous corporations to the state with an eye on the distribution of economic impact for the entire state, especially rural Utah. In her words, Theresa is an unabashed promoter of Utah economic assets and quality of life. Theresa, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am really appreciative of the invitation and looking forward to our discussion.
Theresa, I love how you describe yourself as an unabashed promoter of Utah. So to start us off, tell us what are the unique things you feel like the state has to offer, especially from an economic perspective?
Well, it's really fun to put my economic development hat back on for a little bit today. And as I was thinking about our discussion and some of the things that do make Utah unique and that give us a competitive advantage, there's a host of them. First, I would start with Utah's demographics. We were the fastest growing state in the country from 2010 to 2020. We had strong organic growth during that time period. And then we've also had really strong net immigration. So we've had that net immigration, more individuals moving into the state than moving out of the state. They've come here to find economic opportunity. So we have these really strong demographics of a young, high growth population. That means people who want to go to work and who are employable by some of these great employers. We have really fantastic infrastructure in the state, physical infrastructure. And we also have some expertise in industries that are, I think, really sustainable towards the future, including in life science, IT, financial services, aerospace and defense, and others. These are leading industries that tend to pay higher than the state's average. And that also are based in some sort of technology that again, give them some sort of resilience. On top of it, the state has just been very intentional about promoting economic growth and resilience through the right type of regulatory policies, and then also through the right types of public policies, whether that's through reasonable taxation or innovative workforce development programs that are developed in partnership with our public institutions and with employers. But there's a whole suite of assets that exist within the state of Utah that make it a really terrific place to do business.
One of the other things I feel like we talk about a lot when we talk about what Utah has to offer, especially Utah natives like yourself, I'm a transplant, but I feel this way too, is this great sort of natural quality of life that the state offers with national parks and hiking and skiing, so much natural beauty with the mountains and things that draw people to the state. That quality of life draws people to the state on top of all the economic benefits that the state has to offer. But it does create this tension between growth and protecting our natural, let me say that again. It does create this tension between growth and protecting natural land, wild land, tribal land. Talk about renewable energy in particular and how when we think about growing sustainably, growing intentionally, as you've mentioned, how does renewable energy sort of bridge that gap between the growth that the state wants to see and being intentional and sustainable and protecting the quality of life that is what brings so many of us to Utah in the first place.
Yeah, I do want to underscore what you mentioned, which is that Utah has a very unparalleled access to outdoor recreation, which makes it a sticky place for those of us who did grow up here, and it makes it a really attractive place for folks who may not have had exposure to Utah but are coming here for the first time in their professional career, or who grew up here, left to go find another opportunity, and who've come back. And so it is really important that we preserve these incredible assets that we have, these beautiful physical, natural assets that we have as a state. I heard over and over again when I was leading the economic development organization, EDC Utah, from employers that, gosh, I knew I would find a great local workforce in Utah, but I'm so pleasantly surprised at how easy it's been for me to recruit people in from out of state. I see it myself here now, leading, being on the leadership team of rPlus Energies, and being involved in our recruitment. How enthusiastic people are about either relocating to Utah, or how happy they are to be able to now have a job in renewable energy in the state of Utah, and to be able to stay here. And we do have a number of team members who found their way to rPlus Energies via another state, and who seem to kind of say, I never thought I'd be in Utah, but now I never want to leave. So it is really
such a common refrain.
Yeah, such a common. I just came to ski for 1 year, and here I am 25 years later, right?
Exactly.
So I again just want to underscore how important it is, and how that environmental stewardship has really played into how we think about running rPlus Energies, and how we like to work with when we build these projects. They do they require land to be utilized, and we try to be super respectful to work with private landowners who are interested in keeping the family farm in the farm. We try to be really respectful about minimizing impacts to viewshed, about not taking highly productive agricultural land out of ag, and with the hope being that we can add additional load or additional generation capacity to the electric power system, so that we can responsibly contribute to, or facilitate, or catalyze additional economic growth, both in the communities that host these renewable energy development projects, but then also end users such as you and I, or other businesses, or those who like to turn on their light switches in the morning and have their lights turned on.
How does renewable energy minimize environmental impacts to the space that we live in, right? I love what you've said, that as you develop the projects, obviously they need space to exist, and the really intentional way that rPlus Energies approaches it from that end. How about from all of us breathing the air here, drinking the water here? How does renewable energy make our state more livable in the long term?
Well, Utah is really fortunate in that we have an incredible solar resource that exists here in the state. The sun shines multiple days per year here. We're at a higher elevation, which contributes to the productivity of solar in particular in the state of Utah. And the beauty of solar is it renews, or it refreshes every single day. The sun comes up every single day, and that is the fuel source that we use to generate power through the renewable energy systems that we build. And so there is no byproduct from that. There's no there are no emissions created from harnessing the wind or harnessing the sun in the production of energy. Of course, there are emissions created because you need to build the equipment, but once that equipment is installed, it has some 30 to 40 year lifespan, and does not have and therefore is a really environmentally positive way to generate new electricity.
And it seems to me that that would offset some of maybe, I don't want to call them negative impacts of growth, but some of the less environmentally friendly impacts of growth, right? If we have a ton of in-migration and all these people are using electricity that's coal produced, for example, then we have a sort of negative impact of that growth. But if we can pair that growth with renewable energy sources in particular, do you feel like that mitigates some of that and allows the state to keep growing without impacting the quality of life of the people who live here?
Well, one of the things that I thought we'd talk about today, since this is a business oriented podcast, is how different the energy market is today than it was just a year ago. So we are seeing for the first time in 15 years de- growth on the demand side. So we have happily been able to sustain a significant amount of economic growth since the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 through energy efficiency programs and demand management and having more efficient buildings and so on and so forth. But for the first time in 15 years, we do see this new load demand, and that's coming from a bunch of what I would consider to be really positive things. We're seeing domestic manufacturing and reshoring. We've seen through some of our federal industrial policies, we have now chips are being made in the United States, or they've been made in the United States, but we're seeing increased investment in the United States. We're seeing the adoption of electric vehicles. We are also seeing this huge leap forward in AI and advanced computing. All of this is contributing to new load growth, which we really haven't seen in the last decade and a half. And so what we posit as a company is we need every electron that we can get to be added to the grid so that we can continue to maintain our economic competitiveness, not just as a state in the state of Utah, but also as a country. And so we are really hopeful that we can bring more renewable energy online, renewable energy that's paired with energy storage, so that we can sustainably contribute to the growth, again, of Utah, but also to the country.
Describe to us, Theresa, what one of these large scale renewable energy projects looks like. I think for most of us, myself, for example, my main exposure to renewable energy is solar panels on my neighbor's roof, maybe an electric vehicle. These are really small scale projects, if we can even call them that, right? Your solar panels might generate the electricity that you need just in your home. But when we're talking about advanced computing, big charging stations for electric vehicles, powering manufacturing plants with renewable energy, I'm not sure that most of us understand what that even entails or what it looks like. So can you walk us through what one of these large dispatchable renewable energy projects looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start with an example, which is of the Green River Energy Center. Happily, we just celebrated the groundbreaking for this project. It is a project in Emery County, Utah, which is one of our legacy energy producing communities in the state of Utah. Carbon and Emery are often thought of simultaneously as energy producing communities. We are now under construction on the Green River Energy Center, which is a 400 megawatt solar, 400 megawatt 4-hour battery project. So what does this mean as far as like number of houses and all of that? I'll get into that, but it's an over $1 billion project that's under construction in Emery County. And we are in partnership building the project to be fed into the Pacific Corp network. So many individuals in Utah and businesses, homes, and other are serviced by Pacific Corp. They have about 80% of the market share here. And this will be the most expansive project in the Pacific Corp 6-state network. It's several thousand acres of tracking systems and solar panels on top of them. So if you do think about the solar modules that are on your neighbor's house, it's a lot of those in Emery County that are going to work. So we lay down. There's a your listeners might be interested, and we have a lot of great content on our rPlus Energy's LinkedIn to see what an expansive project like this looks like. We have a tracking system with modules on top of it, and as the sun, rises and sets, the modules, the trackers with the modules sitting on top of them rotate throughout the day so that we can harness as much solar energy as we can. So it looks like a pretty big ranching operation, but what we are producing or ranching is solar energy.
And how much energy? You mentioned 400 megawatts, I believe. So put that into something that we can understand maybe a little easier. Are we talking about powering how many houses, how many factories?
It'd be about enough to power an average of 80,000 Utah residences.
Okay. So
significant.
It's big.
Yeah. It's big.
It's big. And that power that you're creating in the Green River project will go residential? Will it go corporate? Where does this power go?
It's a resource for anyone in the Pacific Corp network. So it's not dedicated to any one particular user. They will have the ability to dispatch that energy as where they need it across their grid.
One thing that I've heard about renewable energy, solar energy, for example, we don't control when the sun is shining, right? So sometimes we get a big influx of solar energy, sometimes there isn't any, and that can create some problems for the grid, right? The power grid, as I understand it, I'm not an expert, but I'm going to say what I think I know, is very carefully calibrated, right, to balance supply and demand. So how I know rPlus Energies works not just in renewable energy development, but in this space of energy storage. So talk about how that sort of plays into managing capacity on the grid. How do we keep this energy for when we need it?
Yeah, that it's all very true what you said. You're actually quite studied on this, it sounds like. But when I go to turn on my light or power up my laptop or sit down in front of my TV or charge my car, I want that power on demand, right? And it is a very sophisticated task of balancing when and where that energy is generated and how it's consumed. And so one of the critiques of renewable energy for a long time, yes, was that, well, it's great when the sun is shining, or it's great when the wind is blowing, but what do we do in the evening, which tends to be the when energy is most needed. It tends to be when people go home and turn on their air conditioning and all of the other appliances that they use to have a good quality of life. And so storage really is a game changer for integrating intermittent resources on like solar, like wind onto the grid. We have a portfolio, of course, of solar plus battery, and that's a prime example of that would be the Green River Energy Center. We also believe in standalone storage. So one of the differentiators for rPlus is that we are developing a portfolio of pump storage hydro projects. Pump storage is the oldest and actually the most common form of grid scale energy storage today. Some 90% of the United States energy storage is pump storage hydro. It's where you have two reservoirs and water is pumped uphill into the upper reservoir when energy is inexpensive or abundant. Like, say, when the sun has been shining or when the wind has been blowing a lot at night, and then is released from the upper reservoir through a series of penstocks, spinning turbines in an underground powerhouse into the lower reservoir, where it then sits until that cycle is repeated over and over again. So we're very bullish on energy storage as we see that the cost and the cost continue to go down. The technology continues to improve for both solar and wind, and therefore we believe that energy storage will continue to be a critical component for ensuring that utilities can meet the demands of their customers when their customers need it.
You mentioned that this is a critique of renewable energy, this storage question. As you've mentioned, there's lots of great solutions to address that, but talk to us about some other critiques of renewable energy, any roadblocks that rPlus Energies has faced in the development of your own projects and how you respond to those.
Well, while the technology has existed for a long time, its deployment at scale is relatively new, like within the last 10, 15 years. And so, like any other new technology, there's a lot of education that happens around that. We get the good fortune of educating and working with a number of stakeholders on any proposed project. And that starts with, of course, our local landowners and our neighbors to those landowners. And then, of course, we have our public officials who want to understand what this means for them from an employment base. How will the construction happen? What happens when when the power company is no longer under a contract to purchase the power? What happens when it's reached the end of its useful life? What is the impact to our tax base? Is this replacing existing taxes? Is it diversifying my tax base? And those are all questions that we've become really accustomed to hearing and working with those stakeholders to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible and explaining what the impacts of these projects are and how they can positively benefit a community. And then how we as a developer think about things maybe a little bit differently than other developers. And that might be through our scholarship program or the way that we engage and show up and continue to show up in the communities where we work. But I think it's mostly that it's new. And many communities in Utah do have a wonderful legacy of energy production, and so they understand how important their communities are to underpinning the economic success of the entire state. For some communities, this is totally new. Iron County, I mentioned, has now the most solar online of any county in the state. They were not an energy producing community as recently as 2015. So it is really a new way of thinking about land use and economic development and economic diversification.
I love this connection that you've made between energy and economic development because I don't think that we always connect those two things, but producing energy in new ways also creates new jobs and new skill sets. Talk to us about the thread that connects those things to rural Utah, right? Emery County, for example, Carbon County, these are rural Utah counties that have a tradition and a legacy of energy production, as you've said. Iron County also in rural Utah and now joining this energy production wave. How does developing these new kinds of projects, right? I think sometimes a critique of renewable energy is, oh, well, all these people working in legacy energy are going to lose their jobs, right? And we see that not just in Utah, but nationwide. This is a common theme when we talk about moving away from coal, for example, to renewable energy. I would assume some of those same concerns, even if they don't exist now, maybe have existed in these rural counties as well. But we're talking about energy as economic development. So in rural Utah in particular, what is the economic impact of bringing these projects online?
Well, it's pretty significant. Again, the Green River Energy Center with an over $1 billion capital investment really means significant impact to local property tax revenue. And this is property tax revenue that can be utilized by the taxing entities, the county, the school district, et cetera, to invest in roads, libraries, schools. There's a very significant injection of talent. During the construction process, we'll have some 500 workers on site at peak for the Green River Energy Center. And though you're correct in that the generating facilities for renewable energy projects don't tend to have the same number of jobs attached to them as maybe a thermal power plant, there are a number of other ways that these projects do benefit local communities, again, through their construction, through local design, engineering, consulting work, law firms, others that are hired to go and help support and to put together the project financings and the construction of these projects. For Emory County, it helps this county continue its wonderful legacy of energy production. It also helps diversify within energy. So they have had this tremendous legacy in Utah of the two coal-fired power plants there, Hunter and Huntington. But now they also get to add on top of that the Green River Energy Center, which is significant. So we see what I've noticed in some of our rural communities, and there's so many ways to define rural, but if you define rural as having a less significant population, but in size, energy projects are fantastic for rural Utah. Again, because they have this large capital investment that's attached to them. That large capital investment translates into increased property tax revenue. And then also they don't have so many jobs that it overwhelms a rural community, and that it really changes the character of a rural community by having a massive, in migration into a community that may not be able to support a large number of new permanent residents, or may not have that in mind for their future.
It's that same tension, right, between growth and preserving the kind of life that we want, the kind of life that we come to Utah to enjoy. And I think that's a great example of another way that renewable energy really allows that to happen while benefiting. I love what you said. It's really underpinning the economic success of the state as a whole. So it sounds like a positive all around. Well, Theresa, you mentioned a few minutes ago that AI is a big power consumer, right? I think I've been reading a lot about how much energy AI slurps up, and that will only continue to grow. Obviously, rPlus Energy is providing renewable energy that will support the development of that technology for all of us. But talk to us a little bit about the role that AI might play in the work that rPlus Energies is doing. We're talking a little bit later this season about AI and the role it plays in a lot of different industries. So I'm curious to hear if rPlus Energies is deploying AI at all in the development of your projects or your predictions going forward about what kind of energy we'll need and how much.
Yeah, it is so interesting to see how AI will be deployed. I'm in a lot of conversations with other business leaders on AI, who's adopting it, who's not. Is it going to, eat all the white collar jobs? And I would say rPlus Energies is watching it really carefully. One, because it is generating new demand for power. And so we want to make sure that we're capable of providing those types of solutions to our customers. I see it, really kind of augmenting the work that we're already doing. We are in a service industry, really. What we create at the end of the day is, are these modern power plants that put new electrons onto the grid so that every other business can function well. But there are a lot of really capable people that get to put together these deals. So I see, I see our team hopefully using it to augment their own productivity. There is a lot of discussion around AI in construction and quality management and safety. So I'm looking to see how that might potentially impact what end up being very large construction projects. But I'd say for us, it's still to be seen how rPlus Energies fully integrates AI. And honestly, we will utilize things that make us more efficient, but we are also in a people business at the end of the day. When we go and meet with a new landowner or a county commissioner and we get to, look them in the eye and shake their hands, that means something, and that something won't be replaced by a machine, we don't think.
I don't think so either. That's what I'm hearing. And I hope that is true because so much of business, whether we're talking about energy, whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about accounting, mergers and acquisitions, financial management, it really is about the people And I love to think of energy that way and to think what allows us to let people live their best lives, right? Not only have the resource that they need, the energy resource that they need, but also to live in a place with clean air and clean water and beautiful natural resources that are being protected. So I appreciate you helping us understand that relationship a little bit better. And now, as we look forward, Theresa, you've talked about how different the energy market is today from even a year ago, certainly from 5 or 10 years ago. So this might be a little bit of a fool's errand, but I'm wondering if you can look into the future for us and tell us, what do we have to expect? What do you anticipate that we'll be seeing in renewable energy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line? What do we have to look forward to?
Well, I think one, again, more and more people recognizing and seeing that renewable energies can be part of the solution, and a more of a public acceptance around that. There's a lot of innovation going on in the energy space right now, but there are also proven technologies that exist that I think people will get more and more comfortable with. More of a recognition around we've been able to for so long just turn on our lights and not really think much about it. But as we do enter into this new era where we may be more constrained on that front, having more of a public recognition, understanding, input and appreciation around where that electricity is generated, how it's generated, how it gets to you, how reliable it is. And I just see Utah continuing to lead on this. We have all of the ingredients to be successful leaders in this future energy space because of the abundance of energy resources that we've had, whether those have been resources that come from underground or above ground, like solar and wind. So I see a really bright future for Utah and energy development here in the state.
And what a great opportunity for all of us, as you say, to really understand more about where our energy comes from. Let me say that again. And what a great opportunity for all of us to understand a little bit better about where our energy comes from, what it takes to create it, and to be responsible stewards of energy ourselves, right? We can all turn into my dad telling us, turn off the lights, turn off the lights, turn off the lights. Right.
Yeah, that was definitely drilled into my head as a kid too. You leave the room, turn off the lights.
Well, this has been so interesting and hopeful. I appreciate our conversation so much, Theresa, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Eccles Business Buzz podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another conversation with an informed decision maker, so be sure to subscribe and tune in. You can also follow us on Instagram at Eccles Alumni for all the latest news from your Eccles Alumni Network. Until next time, Eccles Business Buzz is a production of the David Eccles School of Business and is produced by University FM.